release of both Whelan and Gershkovich.
The Republican primary field expected to get a little bit more crowded officially today. Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina will announce his presidential bid. He'll join a growing group trying to stop President Biden from a second term. That list includes former President Trump, former UN ambassador and former governor of South Carolina Nikki Haley, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, and radio talk show host Larry Elder. And Ron DeSantis about to make his bid official later this week. Joining us now, CNN political commentator and attorney Bakari Sellers and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings. Good morning, guys.
Scott, now to you. I actually am curious what you think of that, because that is the sentiment of a lot of people, that this is Donald Trump's party, and it's not going to be Senator Scott's or Nikki Haley's or anyone else's in the end.
Well, what Bakari said is certainly what Democrats want, is to run against Donald Trump. And I'm so glad Tim Scott is running, because I think he's one of the most influential, optimistic, conservative voices in the country. His story, as Bakari said, is incredible. And his whole message of personal responsibility versus constant victimhood mentality is a conversation this country needs to have desperately. We need to have it in the Republican Party. We need to have it as a nation. And when you hear Tim Scott speak and when you see him do retail politics, you can see how he could catch on. I agree that right now Donald Trump's in a bit of a dominant position if you just look at the polling, but that's the purpose of campaigns, and I think Tim Scott's going to really stand out in this field. I mean, the reality is, if we nominated Tim Scott, we'd probably win the presidential campaign by 15 points next year. If we nominated Ron DeSantis, same thing. If we nominate Trump, it's a much dicier proposition for Republicans, and I think Tim Scott's optimism is going to be infectious in this field, and I'm glad for it.
Scott, I wonder if you think too many people are writing off Tim Scott too quickly as a VP contender. I mean, they've been doing this before he even officially jumped in. He's got a ton of money. He now has the support of the #2 Republican in the Senate, John Thune. Mike Rounds last Wednesday told the Washington Examiner he would also support Tim Scott. Are we underestimating his ability and a positive message to win the primary?
Well, I think there are people who just want Donald Trump to have the nomination. They include Donald Trump and his people, all the Democrats, most of the political media. I mean, everybody that has a vested interest in having Donald Trump is trying to say this primary shouldn't even exist. This is the purpose of campaigns, to allow somebody like Tim Scott, who's got a terrific message and a terrific story, to go out and perform. Tactically, one thing you said is very important. He brings $22 million from his federal account into this campaign, not to mention an outside super PAC. This guy's got the money to play for quite a while. And I'm telling you, when you get him out in retail settings, it's going to play. Tim Scott is an infectious guy. When you see him in person, people will say, hey, why not this? So I think he's going to have a moment. What's going to happen? I don't know. I bet on horses, not politicians. But Tim Scott is one of my favorite people in this campaign.
They're more predictable.
They're actually more, they are now, that's for sure.